Chapter 733. This time, Yang Shan wanted to use his seniority to oppress the other party. It was true that Yang Chundong had his eyes on Tingshan, but he was only a regiment commander. Facing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, there was still a lot of pressure. Just as the situation became tense, a thunderous voice suddenly came from behind the lung foam. "I'm sorry, Minister Yang, but you can no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." As the voice fell, a group of people walked out from behind the crowd. When they saw this group of people, all the Lung Fong involuntarily took a step back and showed a very respectful expression. This was because the three people who came were of high status. Two of them were of high status. They were Yang Wu, Ling Song, and Ma Dali. There was no need to say much about Yang Wu. When Yang Chundong was in Crimson City, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs representative. His status was even higher than City Lord Yu Qian. Ling Song was the commander of the army's 1st Division and was known as the #1 person in the army. There were even rumors that the 1st Division would become the 1st Army. When that time came, if there were no accidents, the position of 1st Army Commander would fall on him. He was also the superior of all the Lung Fong in the city. His every move was naturally very eye-catching. The third person was Ma Dali. Although his name was very domineering and he looked very burly, he had an official status. He was the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Someone once said that the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be eloquent and look kind. Only then would it be helpful for both sides to negotiate. A brawny man like Ma Dali shouldn't be in such a team. However, when everyone thought that it was inappropriate, Yang Chundong did the opposite. He appointed this person as the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and gave the authority to Yang Shan. The reason why he did this was because what Yang Xie needed now was a strong minister of foreign affairs. Ma Dali fit this role perfectly. For example, the shout that Yang Shan could no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was made by Ma Dali. When the three of them appeared, the pressure on Tingshan was greatly reduced. Yang Taizhu also lowered his head. He knew very well that this situation was not something his father could handle. Perhaps when Madame arrived, she could represent 5th Madame to deal with these people. Yang Taizhu placed his hopes on his wife. Yang Shan's expression changed rapidly at this moment, especially when he saw Ma Dali appear. His eyelids twitched violently, and his intuition told him that things were not going well. However, for the sake of his son's safety, he had to hold on until his daughter-in-law arrived. So it's 5th Master Yang and Division Master Ling. Your presence brings light to my humble abode. But why didn't you inform me in advance so that I could go out and welcome you? Yang Shan was indeed someone who often dealt with people. His expression quickly returned to normal. He smiled at Yang Wu and Ling Song, as if they were old friends who had a very good relationship. On the other hand, Ma Dali, who was standing beside the two of them, turned a blind eye. Ma Dali was only his assistant. Choosing to ignore him at this moment showed how domineering he was. Yang Shan wanted to use this to tell everyone that those who were not as high as him and those who were not as high as him should not speak anymore. He would not listen either. Both Yang Wu and Ling Song understood Yang Shan's little scheme. Perhaps they did not have this kind of experience before, nor had they experienced such a secret struggle. However, they had been in a high position for so many years. Even if they had not seen a pig being slaughtered, how could they not have eaten pork? In such a big environment, it was not something that could be avoided just because one wanted to. Some things had long been accustomed to. Not only did they understand Yang Shan's little scheme, but they also knew very well in their hearts. Ling Song smiled when he saw that Yang Shan had made his move. Then he said, "It's just to catch a person. How could we alarm Division Master Yang?" When Ling Song said this, Yang Shan also smiled. Anyone could tell that this was not a hearty laugh, but a sneer. Division Master Ling makes it sound so easy. This time, the person you want to catch is my son. As a parent, I think I have the right to know what is going on. However, I wonder if Division Master Ling can tell me what crime my son committed. Do you have any evidence? Yang Shan asked in return. His voice did not contain any emotional fluctuations, but anyone could tell that he was on the verge of exploding. It seemed that if a reasonable answer was not given, he would stop them from taking the person away. Who was Yang Shan? During the reign of Ren Xuanji, he became an official of the Great Ming Dynasty. Later, when Zhu Qizhan took over, he was already the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights. He had also experienced the Tumu Revolution. In the end, he went to the southern Ming Dynasty under the protection and help of Yang Chendong. Such an experienced person who was used to deceiving and deceiving each other had long since mastered the art of calmness. He wouldn't be so easily angered. However, he still pretended to be like this. It was tantamount to showing his determination to protect his son's safety. At the same time, he was stalling for time and waiting for his daughter-in-law to arrive. He was also testing Leng Song's confidence. He wanted to see what kind of evidence the other party had and what he needed to do if he wanted to protect his son. Yang Shan stood up. He had single-handedly carried Yang Wu and Leng Song, the two great mountains who had come to the manor. His boldness was enough, and his courage was admirable. If it was some ordinary small matter, he would have to give face and let him go if he personally stood up. What was pitiful was that this time, the order was personally given by the sixth young master. No matter how determined Yang Shan was, he could not overturn the situation this time. The reason why they did not use thunderous methods was because the batch of things that had been sent to the sea had not been shipped back. They could not be completely sure what was inside. Without any definite information, Leng Song was not in a hurry to make the final move. Instead, he chuckled and said, "This is strange. Doesn't your son know what he has done? Why is he asking me about it?" "Commander Leng, I did not do anything. You are accusing me wrongly. It is nothing more than your military being envious of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are accusing me wrongly." Although Yang Taizhu, who was being escorted, was restrained, his mouth was not sealed. He could still speak. Seeing that his father was exonerating him, he took the opportunity to shout and shout. Of course, no one knew how true these words were. Most importantly, Yang Wu was here. If he heard some of these words, would he think that this matter was originally due to the conflict between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the military department, and that was why this happened? After Yang Tiezhu's accusation, many of the cold front soldiers' faces turned ugly. Teng Shan, for example, wished he could give Yang Shan a tight slap across the face and let him know the consequences of slandering the military and its soldiers. On the other hand, Leng Song was not in a hurry. He just stood there with his hands behind his back and smiled. No one knew better than him that this time, he took action completely because Director Yang Sen personally came and arranged it. He was just following orders. Why would he be afraid of being accused or even framed? Yang Shan and Yang Tiezhu's counterattack made the originally tense Yang family courtyard fall into silence. Suddenly, everyone stopped talking. They just looked at each other like they were waiting for something. Yes, everyone was waiting. The Yang father and son were waiting for Lin Lin's arrival. As long as she came, she could represent the fifth young mistress to express her attitude. She was one of the matriarchs. When the master was not around, no one could shake the position of the matriarch. She would have the effect of changing the situation. Yang Wu and Leng Song were waiting for the news from the new dock. As long as the cargo ship was transported back, Chun Shuquan would be caught and betrayed Yang Taizhu. Then they could start the next step of the operation. At that time, no one would be able to stop them. While waiting like this, the three cargo ships on the new dock of Chichen City began to dock again. The dozens of large carts of goods on them were also transported back to the new dock one by one. Director Chen Shuquan, who was about to leave, was stunned by the scene in front of him. According to his habit, every time the goods were transported out, he would stay at the new dock for a while. After confirming that there were no other problems, he would leave. After all, it was the goods of the Security Bureau. As the director, it was reasonable for him to stay a little longer. Of course, he would stay a little longer because Chun Shuquan was cautious. He was worried that someone would have designs on the cargo ships of the Security Bureau. If he did not stay here, what would he do if something went wrong? And it was this long stop that allowed him to see a good show. The three cargo ships that had just set out sailed back, and even the cold front navy came back with the ships. The ships were still the same ships, and the escorts were still the same people. The appearance of this scene made Chen Shuchuan's heart skip a beat. He had a hunch that something bad was going to happen. He pretended to be calm and walked towards the 3 ships of goods that were docked at the dock. He was still far away, but his shout could be heard. What happened? Why are the goods being transported back? Director Chen, there was an order from above. We don't know what's going on. A cold front platoon leader in charge of escorting the goods said with a salute. The platoon leader really didn't know what happened. Due to the difference in status between the two of them, he was telling the truth. Chen Shuquan saw the platoon leader's respect. He seemed to see hope. His face changed and he said sternly, "Order? Who gave the order? Do you know that this is what the Security Bureau wants? There are a lot of things involved. How can they stop just like that? Send the goods out immediately. As for the order, I will take it for you. I promise that you will not be punished." Chapter 734. Chen Shuchuan's thinking was simple. As long as the goods were sent out of the sea and handed over to the people arranged by Yang Taiju overseas, there would be no evidence. At that time, he could just say that he didn't know anything. Without evidence, no one could casually convict him. No matter what, Chen Shuquan was still the head of the Security Bureau's office in Crimson City. His words were still very authoritative. Hearing this, platoon leader Lung Feng hesitated. After all, offending the head of the Security Bureau was not a wise move. If he really wanted to target him, how could he, a small platoon leader, resist? Platoon leader Lung Feng was still in a mental struggle, hesitating about what to do. On the new pier, another group of people had appeared. The leader was a young man with delicate features. The moment he appeared, he laughed heartily. "Brother Chen, you have such great authority. Lung Feng doesn't belong to our Security Bureau, yet you can order him around as you please. You're really amazing. Who is it? Who is secretly making sarcastic remarks? Come out if you have the ability." As soon as the sarcastic remarks were heard, Chen Shuchuan's face darkened. He suddenly turned his head, looking like he was looking for someone to punish. Chen Shuquan did indeed have such confidence. Director Yang San was not in Crimson City, so he was the highest-ranking person in charge of the Security Bureau here. From a certain point of view, he could exist side by side with military chiefs like Leng Song and Gao Xiong. Even if the people from the political department came, he could still wrestle with them. Due to the confidentiality rules, the Security Bureau was independent of any system and was directly under the 6th Young Master's jurisdiction. In other words, even if Yang Wu Yi appeared here, if he was unyielding, he could still face him head-on. Of course, all of this was limited to the other party not receiving the 6th Young Master's orders. Thinking about how he dared to face Yang Wu Yi, what a proud existence he was. It was no wonder that, when he heard people talking about him like this, he immediately shouted like a plucked rooster. "Ha ha ha, Brother Chen, I haven't been hiding in the dark. I've been standing here all this time. It's just that your standards are too high and you didn't notice me." As the laughter continued, Che Chao led a group of 20 members of the Security Bureau's operations team that had been transferred from various places to Chen Shuquan. A group of people strode over. Because it was dark, they couldn't see clearly, but Chen Shuchuan's expression had already begun to change. Since the other party was so fearless, his identity must not be simple. Moreover, the goods were right in front of him. How was he going to explain himself under such conclusive evidence? Chen Shuchuan's brain spun rapidly as he formulated various countermeasures in his mind. At this time, Che Chao had already strode in front of him. With the help of the street lights on the pier, they could finally see each other clearly. At this moment, Chen Shuchuan's face was filled with shock. "Che Chao, how could it be you? Why can't it be me?" Che Chao, who was far calmer than Chen Shuquan, had a smile on his face as he slowly asked, "Brother Chen, why are you so nervous? Could it be that my appearance has delayed your good fortune?" When he suddenly saw Che Chao, Chen Shuquan was indeed shocked. He could not understand why the other party would appear in Crimson City, and why he did not receive any news at all. However, he soon calmed down. After all, the other party's level was lower than his. Even so, what was there to be afraid of? Perhaps the other party had come to Crimson City to settle some personal matters, or perhaps to visit family and friends. At this point, it must be said that the majority of the staff of the Security Bureau lived in the dark, and the mental pressure was immense. Therefore, every year they would have a normal holiday to return to society and be an ordinary person. Otherwise, they would be driven crazy. Chun Shuquan thought that Che Chao was probably on vacation, and he just happened to appear in Crimson City, which was why this scene was happening in front of him. It could be said that he was comforting himself, but in short, Chun Shuquan quickly calmed down and strode towards Che Chao. As he walked, he said, "Brother Che, it's not that I want to nag you, but since you've come to Crimson City, you should at least greet me so that I can do my part as a host, right?" Chun Shuquan took the initiative to get close to Che Chao, and Che Chao also smiled and replied, "Hey, I know that Brother Chun is busy, so I didn't come to disturb you. Please don't blame me." Che Chao being so polite made Chun Shuquan feel more at ease, and the smile on his face grew wider. "What do you mean by disturb? You don't treat me as one of your own. Just based on this point, you should be punished. How about this? I'll punish you with 3 cups of wine tonight. Haha, let's go. I'll find a place to welcome you." As he spoke, Chun Shuchuan's large hand had already landed on Che Chao's shoulder. Those who didn't know would think that their relationship was very good. Che Chao, who was originally cupping his fists and apologizing, was waiting for Chun Shuchuan's hand to land on his shoulder. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a cold expression. His large hand suddenly grabbed Chun Shuchuan's arm from his chest, and then with a twist, he pulled Chun Shuquan into his embrace, and a Type 54 firearm was pressed against Chun Shuchuan's temple. "I'm sorry, Director Chen. I have important matters to attend to, so I don't have the time to drink with you." The sudden change in the situation made Chun Shuchuan's subordinates, who were watching everything with a smile, stunned. Then, under the conditioned reflex of their years of training, a few of them reached into their waists, pulled out the knives on their waist and shouted, "What are you doing? Release Director Chun immediately. Don't be agitated. Don't be agitated. Let's observe the situation first." Dong Hui, who was mixed in the crowd, played a role at this time. He stretched out his arms, stopping everyone from being impulsive, and gave a few of his subordinates a look. Under Dong Hui's lead, a few of his subordinates also joined the ranks of persuading everyone not to be impulsive, causing the originally tense atmosphere to be suppressed. At this time, Chun Shuquan was in Che Chao's embrace, facing his subordinates. Seeing Dong Hui's performance, his eyes seemed to be about to pop out. But at this time, he also knew that this was not the time to fight with Dong Hui. His opponent was still Che Chao. "Old brother Che, what are you doing? Do you know that everything you're doing is offending your superiors? Do you know, according to our internal family law, if you do this, not only will you die, your family won't get any benefits? Let me tell you, let me go immediately, and for the sake of our previous relationship, I can pretend that nothing happened." Chun Shuquan was still suppressing people with his power, trying to make Che Chao stop. But now that he had the initiative, how could Che Chao easily let go? He looked at the back of Chun Shuchuan's head with a smile, as if he was looking at an idiot. "Director Chun, things have already turned out like this. Don't you know how to repent? Tell me, where are these things going to be shipped?" "Of course it's to the Security Bureau." Chun Shuquan gritted his teeth and said, "Security Bureau? Why don't I know about it?" Che Chao asked again. "Your rank is not high enough, of course you don't know. Let me tell you, this is the director's arrangement, and it's classified as a top secret. It's already a mistake for you to know this now, do you understand?" Relying on his higher rank, Chun Shuquan spouted nonsense. Now, as long as he could get through this, he would find a random crime to take down Che Chao. In short, he would not give Che Chao a chance to ask Yang San. He wanted to silence him. Chun Shuquan was still thinking about what to do once he had the initiative, when a very familiar voice came from behind him. "I don't understand? I've never given such an order, but I don't know who you heard it from." "Of course you don't understand. This is the Bureau." Chun Shuquan was about to say something with an arrogant look, but suddenly he was stunned. This voice was so familiar. It sounded like the bureau directors. Che Chao seemed to know what he was thinking. He loosened his grip slightly, allowing him to turn his head. When he turned his head, he saw Yang San in front of him with a fierce face. Immediately, Chun Shuchuan's legs turned to jelly, and he could no longer stand. With a plop, he sat on the ground. The main culprit had appeared, and Chun Shuquan knew that everything was over. The irrefutable evidence was right in front of him. He was afraid that no matter what excuse he found, it would be useless. When he thought of the director's means and the family law of the Security Bureau, it was really difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. His face turned pale at this moment. Bureau Director, I was wrong. Yang Taiju forced me to do everything. I was too greedy. Yang San didn't say another word, so Chun Shuquan confessed everything. Now, he no longer hoped for a future or even to live. He only hoped for a quick death and not to implicate his family. He was very grateful. Chun Shuquan was so cooperative, and Yang San stood there and listened coldly. After listening to Chun Shuquan, he sighed softly. Chun Shuquan, you've been in the Security Bureau for a long time, and your name is on the 6th Young Masters list. Do you know that your future is limitless? Do you know how many generations your descendants will be proud of having you as their ancestor? But now, because of your wrong decision, everything is gone. Yang San could not say whether he was lamenting or feeling pity for Chun Shuquan. He shook his head several times. It was obvious that this result made him a little sad. After all, it was not easy to cultivate a talent, and they had known each other for so many years, it was impossible to say that they had no feelings for each other. Now that he had made a mistake, a big mistake, it also meant the end of their friendship. It was no wonder that Yang San was a little sad. Yes, I know that I have done something wrong this time. I am willing to confess everything, and I am willing to testify. I only hope that the director will not implicate my family, and give me a quick death. Chun Shuquan could feel the sadness in Yang San's heart. How could he feel good in his heart? But since he had embarked on this path, there was no turning back. At this time, he could only use the last trace of the director's feelings for him to make his own request. Chapter 735. Cooperate well. I promise I won't implicate your family. Yang San knew what Chun Shuquan was worried about. Perhaps this was the only thing he could do for the other party. He patted the other party's shoulder lightly. Che Chao, I'll leave this to you. He will cooperate well with you and tell you everything we want to know. Director, don't worry. I'll get the confession immediately. Che Chao patted his chest and promised. There was a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The chance to make a big contribution had come. As long as he did this well, he could get promoted as he wished and become the new director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. One was eager to make a contribution, the other was eager to atone for his sins. The two of them got together, and the process of taking notes and testimonies went very smoothly. In just half an hour, a clear file appeared in front of Yang San, who was in the duty room. After taking a quick look, Yang San sighed softly. Send someone to inform Yang Wu in the palace. It's time to reel in the net. Also, get the action team to move out. All the officials related to this matter must not be let off. Arrest them all. Yes, I'll do it immediately. Che Chao replied and turned to leave. This night, Crimson City was destined to not be peaceful. Palace. This palace occupied a large area and was built magnificently. It seemed to be an independent existence from Crimson City. Although the master was rarely here, no one dared to disrespect this place. So much so that anyone who walked out of this place could issue orders, and they all had a higher status than anyone else. Lin Lin, this woman with average looks and beauty was at most 30%, was one of the people who often went in and out of the palace. With her eloquence that could make a dead person come back to life, she gained the trust of the 5th Madame Suminaire and became the representative of the 5th Madame. Originally, Suminaire had a personal maid named Xiao Yun. However, this maid was a little lazy. In the end, the purchasing of the necessities of the palace fell to Lin Lin, who had been by Suminaire's side since she came to Crimson City. Lin Lin was a person who knew how to conduct herself. Not only did she know how to say nice things to make Sumaner laugh heartily, she also had a very good relationship with the other maids. In this regard, her husband, Yang Taiju, was also very willing to spend money. With money, she could naturally bribe many people to do things for her. It was precisely because Lin Lin usually paid attention to the people around her that she was able to rope in more people. When the Yang mansion was surrounded, Yang Shan arranged for his trusted steward to leave through the secret passage in the mansion and come to the palace. Soon, a servant girl who had received favor handed the news to Lin Lin. Lin Lin, who suddenly received the news, was shocked. Although she didn't know what her husband, Yang Taiju, did for a living, seeing how generous he usually was, she could guess that the money might not be so honorable. Because of this matter, she had hesitated and considered. However, when she thought of how his father was the dignified minister of foreign affairs and was the person favored by the sixth young master, it was reasonable for such a family to have some unexpected wealth. She didn't think too much about it. However, now it seemed that the matter was a little serious. Once something happened to her husband, she would have no backing and no income. How could she unite more maids in the future? This would shake her foundation. She had no choice but to save him. Lin Lin decided to take action. However, before leaving the palace, she still had a very important thing to do. That was to first obtain the support of the fifth madam. Only in this way could she be considered to have the sword of the imperial court. Only then could she do things without fear. Is madam asleep? Lin Lin came to the room where Sumaner was resting and asked the maid on duty tonight. Not yet. Sister Lin, is something the matter? The maid on duty had a good relationship with Lin Lin and asked with a smile. I have a small matter to see, madam. On the surface, Lin Lin acted as if nothing had happened. As she spoke, she had already walked into the bedroom. When she saw Sumaner sitting in front of the god's mirror removing her makeup, she knelt on the ground without another word. It was just an action without a word, but it gave Xiao Yun a fright. Sumaner, who was sitting there, also saw everything that happened behind her through the divine mirror. She was also shocked. Ling what happened? Why do you have to be so respectful? It was just like how Yang Chundong asked his subordinates not to kneel for no reason. In the palace, unless it was an important occasion, there was no rule to kneel. Madam, please save Ling Save the life of my husband's family. With a tear-stained face, Lin Lin looked like an excellent actress at this moment. She spoke as if she had been wronged. What's going on? Stand up and talk. Sumaner's expression became much more serious when she heard this. This maid, who was very considerate of her, was married to the son of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan. What exactly happened that even Minister Yang was unable to save her? Sumaner, who had already thought of the wording, started to distort the truth. She said that Minister Yang had long made people jealous because of his high position and power. She said that the Yang family had a relationship with Madame again, causing some people to be jealous. She said that it was not a matter of a day for everyone to overthrow Minister Yang and so on. In the end, Lin Lin said bluntly, Madam, the downfall of my husband's family is a small matter, but it will affect Madam's reputation. What's more, there will be people who want to take the opportunity to attack the sixth young master's prestige. This is a big matter. The sixth young master is not in the city all year round, and the development of the city is so prosperous. It's hard to tell what's in a person's heart. Sumaner did not pay much attention to the previous words. Even if it involved herself, she did not pay much attention to it. It was enough for her husband to know what kind of person she was. As for the opinions of others, she did not care at all. Because without her husband, she was probably a dead person now. It was hateful that she believed the one-sided words of a villain and even had delusions of killing her husband. Now that she thought about it, she really regretted it. All of this made Sumaner extremely grateful to Yang Chundong. She would not allow anyone to threaten her husband's safety, even if her reputation was damaged. Now that she heard that someone actually had such an idea, how could she not be angry? She glared and said, How preposterous! Is it true that because my husband is not around, some people want to indulge in wild fantasies? Yes, madam. This matter is not a small matter. Please make a decision. Seeing that Su Maner had fallen into a trap, Lin Lin was overjoyed and continued to instigate her. Lin Lin was asking what to do next. Should she help the Yang family? In this way, it would be equivalent to indirectly helping her. Su Maner understood the hidden meaning in his words. After thinking for a while, she said, "Then go and take a look. If they are trying to frame you, then let them investigate seriously. If they really did do it, then even you are not allowed to speak carelessly." Su Maner was still smart. She did not make a conclusion about things that she did not understand. Instead, she wanted to base it on facts. However, how could she know that the starting point of any matter might be good? But in the end, it depended on who was carrying it out. If the person carrying it out was someone who could not distinguish right from wrong, wanting to have a fair decision would become a delusion. Lin Lin was waiting for this sentence. She immediately agreed, stood up, and walked out of the bedroom. At this moment, she was no longer acting like a weak woman just now. Instead, she was filled with pride and confidence. "Humph, since you dare to go against my husband's family, then you can wait to be dealt with." After receiving Su Maner's support, Lin Lin seemed to have changed into a different person. When she walked out of the palace, her expression was filled with confidence. She wanted to use the name of a tiger. What could others do about it? Leading 4 maids, Lin Lin walked in front with large strides. Her arrogant appearance made her look like a master. Along the way, all the maids who met her stopped in their tracks from afar. When they got closer, they lowered their heads and asked questions with a fawning and respectful expression. From afar, she could see the outer gate of the palace. As long as she walked past it, she would reach the outer palace. Although there were many guards there in charge of security, with Lin Lin's status, they did not even have the courage to check. Could be said that once she passed through the gate, she would be free to fly. Lin Lin's face subconsciously revealed a victorious smile. However, at this moment, a light shout sounded behind her. "Are you Lin Lin? Wait a moment." Someone suddenly shouted her name behind her. Out of instinct, Lin Lin stopped in her tracks. When she turned around, she saw a group of people coming from afar. She recognized the leader. It was First Madam's personal maid, Xiao Qing. Beside Xiao Qing was the palace's head maid, Tai Jie. Sister Xiao Qing. After seeing that it was the young miss, Lin Lin immediately put away her arrogant expression and showed a very well-behaved appearance. She even intentionally bowed. This was the etiquette that only a servant would show to a master. It was no wonder that Lin Lin was so careful. Although she was valued by the 5th Madam and was considered a superior existence among the maids, she was still nothing in front of Xiao Qing. She was First Madam's favorite and had grown up with First Madam. Putting aside the fact that their relationship had been nurtured since they were young, Xiao Qing's husband, Sun Chuang, was already a battalion officer. Even the 6th young master had taken note of him. Could be said that his future was bright. Normally, such a person could open her own residence and be a mistress. However, she didn't. Instead, she stayed by the eldest madam's side and served her wholeheartedly. Just based on this, which maid in the palace didn't respect her? Which maid dared to give her a hard time? The sudden appearance of little Qing forced Lin Lin to stop her footsteps and stand there with a respectful expression. Chapter 736. Little Qing took small steps and soon arrived in front of Lin Lin. She first looked her up and down and then asked with a smile, "Little sister Lin Lin, it's so late. Where are you going?" If someone else asked her this question, Lin Lin could choose not to answer. They were all maids. One served the 1st Madam and the other served the 5th Madam. They usually minded their own business. But since it was little Qing who asked the question, Lin Lin had to answer, "It's like this. The 5th Madam has something for me to do, so I left the palace late at night." "I see. Since it's like this, you don't have to go. Go back and wait for the news." Little Qing nodded and then said slowly, "HM?" Lin Lin was also confused by this sentence. She looked up and said to little Qing, "Sister little Qing, I don't know if you didn't hear clearly. I went out this time on the fifth madam's orders. I know. That's why I told you to go back and wait. Little Qing didn't wait for her to finish and stopped her. Then she turned her head and looked at the 8 maids behind her, especially the leader, Taidye, and said, "Listen well. Send little sister Little Qing and the others back. Don't wander around outside." After saying this casually, Little Qing turned and left. She didn't even want to explain. The 8 maids behind her all stayed and stared at Lin Lin and the others. It seemed that if they didn't listen, then don't blame them for being rude. She was stopped. Even though it was Little Qing who gave this order, Lin Lin was still a bit unconvinced. Although she could go back and ask Fifth Madam again, it would inevitably delay time. Who knew if there would be any changes in the situation? So her eyes moved and she looked at the 8 maids surrounding her. She smiled and said, "Sisters, we're all maids and it's not easy for us. Why don't you make it easy? If you do me a favor, I will remember it in my heart." As she spoke, Lin Lin took out a stack of banknotes from her sleeves. The smallest banknote on the stack was worth 100 taels. She took out 800 taels. One had to say that Lin Lin was very generous. If it was any other time, the maids below would be beaming with joy and would say some words of blessings as they received the banknotes. However, it was a pity that this time, the trick that worked every single time did not work. The faces of the 8 maids didn't change at all. The leader, Taidye, acted as if she didn't see the banknotes and said, "Lin Lin, you'd better not make things difficult for us. Be obedient. Otherwise, once we start fighting, it will be really embarrassing." After getting the cold shoulder, Lin Lin's face became very ugly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, then I'll go find the 5th madam. I don't believe that there's no justice in the palace." As she spoke, she turned around angrily and walked straight to the palace where the 5th madam was resting. At this time, Lin Lin didn't know that her backer, the 5th madam, had been invited to the 1st madam's palace. Not only Madame Wu but Madame Shui, the 3rd madam, was also there. At this time, they were reading a telegram sent by Yang Chundong which talked about some things about Yang Taizhu. Su Maner had just left when she received a message saying that the 1st madam had invited her. In the days when Yang Chundong was not around, the master of the palace was naturally the 1st madam, Hu Yan. Now that the 1st madam had given the order, not to mention that she had not yet rested, even if she had rested, she still had to get dressed and get up. Su Maner didn't dare to delay. With the help of the maid, Xiao Yun, she put on some light makeup and rushed to the 1st madam's palace with a group of maids. As soon as she entered the hall, she saw that Hu Yan and Madame Shui had already taken their seats. "5th sister, you're here. Come and sit." Seeing Su Maner appear, Hu Yan's face didn't have the slightest hint of anger or condemnation because she already knew that Lin Lin's actions were carried out behind Su Maner's back. In fact, this sister of hers didn't know anything. Su Maner really didn't know anything. Since the 1st madam called her, she naturally sat down. Then, she smiled and asked Hu Yan, "Sister, what happened?" Something must have happened for them to call her over so late at night. Su Maner's IQ wasn't low. She didn't think that the sisters would gather at this time just to chat about their daily lives. This time, before Hu Yan could speak, Madame Shui had already passed the telegram to her. "5th sister, you should take a look at this first." With a face full of doubt, Su Maner took the telegram from the maid, Xiao Yun. When her gaze fell on the contents of the telegram, Su Maner's expression quickly became a little ugly. Perhaps a telegram to others could be sent more simply, as long as the meaning was clear. But how could Yang Chundong be stingy with his words when sending a telegram to his wife? In this telegram, Yang Chundong explained everything very clearly. He even mentioned Lin Lin's name. Although some things couldn't be described in such detail like when they met, the mention of Lin Lin's name already explained a lot of things. While Su Maner was still digesting this news, Hu Yan had already opened her mouth and said, "This time, my husband is really angry. He risked his life at the front lines to fight for the world, working hard to save more Han people. But we still have to worry about our rear. Speaking of which, it's really our fault." It was a simple sentence, but Su Maner's expression froze when she heard it. She knew that she had really done something wrong this time. She had actually mistakenly trusted a maidservant and unknowingly passed on such a wrong signal to others, which had almost led to a disaster. Thinking that if it wasn't for her bad judgment, she wouldn't have made her husband worry about this, Su Maner felt waves of self-blame. Just as Su Maner was still accepting the condemnation in her heart, Xiao Yun suddenly entered the hall. She first greeted them and bowed. Then, she said, "Madam, third madam, fifth madam, Sun Chuang of the Imperial Army has something to discuss with you. Your husband is here. Let him in," Hu Yen said jokingly. From this point, it could be seen that she was not very angry. She, who had lived in the Hu family since she was young, was even more tired of hearing about all kinds of struggles. She had seen many servants doing bad things in the name of their master. It was precisely because of this that she didn't find it strange. Lin Lin was guilty, so she would be punished. As for fifth sister, after this incident, she should be more careful when using people. This was equivalent to having an effect. Xiao Yun, who was teased by her master, blushed. After agreeing, she went out to pass on the message. Soon, Sun Chuang, who had the rank of major, walked into the hall. He strode in, but once he entered the hall, he knelt on the ground without raising his head. He knew very well what kind of status the three people in front of him had. If he casually looked at them, it would be a sin. Sun Chuang of the Imperial Army greets first madam, third madam, and fifth madam. A loud and clear voice sounded in the hall. "Get up. What's the matter at this time of night?" Hu Yen sat at the head of the table and asked in the manner of a host. Reporting to first madam, news just came from the front. The matter of Yang Tieju smuggling has been confirmed without a doubt. Not only that, his collaborator also said that there are a large number of weapons and armors in the Yang residence. This subordinate has come to temporarily close the palace gates in advance. Please allow me to do so. Sun Chuang's head was still lowered, but he did say a fact and result that the women did not expect. Are they going to rebel? When Hu Yen heard this, she was also shocked. It was common for subordinates to do some evil things in the name of their master, and it was also very difficult to truly prohibit it. However, the matter at hand involved military supplies, so the nature of the matter had changed. Among the three women, when Su Maner heard this, she was so scared that her face turned pale. Even the newspaper in her hand fell to the ground. At this moment, she finally knew what kind of end she had gotten for her nepotism. And it was her husband who had sensed all of this. If her husband had not seen through everything, what kind of result would there be? Would there be a day when someone would threaten the safety of the palace? If her two sisters were really hurt because of this, wouldn't she be guilty of the most heinous crimes? At this moment, Su Maner hated Lin Lin to the core. She had trusted her so much, but she had indeed used her name to help the evildoer. Something big had almost happened. It was truly unforgivable. Third madam's expression also changed abruptly. Then, she looked at first madam Hu Yen and said, "Sister, the matter isn't that serious, right? Isn't Yang Wu at Yang Shan's place? He shouldn't give them a chance to resist. Isn't it better to be on guard?" Hu Yen shook her head lightly. It was better to be safe than sorry. When she thought about how someone really threatened the safety of the palace, it was fine if something happened to her and the others, but she was afraid that it would cause her husband to go crazy. If that happened, many plans would be disrupted. This was the most terrible thing. Her husband was risking his life at the front. It was fine if they could not provide any help, but they definitely could not be a hindrance at the back. Thinking of this, Hu Yen said decisively, "All right, we'll do as Battalion Commander Sun says. Seal the palace for now. If there aren't enough troops, you can deploy troops nearby. In a while, I will ask Xiao Yun to give you the token that my husband gave me." Yes, Sun Chuang understands. Sun Chuang left with large strides. Holding the token that Hu Yen gave him, he mobilized a cold front battalion to protect the palace. And inside the palace, the three madams also returned to their own palaces. Su Maner also returned, but her expression was not good. Thinking about what she had said before the three sisters separated, she would definitely give them an explanation. On the way back, she clenched her right fist several times, loosened it, and clenched it again. Chapter 737. Sumaner had been through a lot since she was young, and her willpower had long been tempered to be very firm. Otherwise, she would not have attempted to assassinate Yang Chendong. But recently, or rather, ever since she came to Crimson City, she was completely protected. Every day, there were people serving her in the palace. Over time, her wildness had been worn away, and she had become much purer. She originally thought that her life would be like this. One day, when she gave birth to a child for her husband, she would be happy for the rest of her life. But now, it seemed that conflicts were everywhere. If she was careless, she might be consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, her husband was reasonable and understood people's hearts. Her sisters were also kind-hearted and did not have the intention to blame her. If it was someone else, this matter would probably be enough to put her to death, and she would never be able to make a comeback. Since her husband understood her so well, then not only did she have to clean up the beginning and end of this matter, she also had to do some other things. She was lazy from staying in the palace every day. It was time for her to stretch her muscles and bones. As she thought about it, she returned to her palace. From afar, she saw Lin Lin, who had an aggrieved expression, walking over. "Madam, I wanted to leave the palace, but I was stopped by Xiao Qing. How is she stopping me? She is clearly not giving you face. Xiao Yun. Take her down and slap her 30 times. Without waiting for Lin Lin to finish speaking, Sumaner's voice sounded. At this time, this woman was still trying to sow discord in front of her. Her intentions were truly hateful. Xiao Yun, who was at the side, did not know what had happened. She only knew that Madame's expression was not good after she returned. Now that there was an order, she did not dare to disobey. She brought 2 maids to Lin Lin's side, and a series of loud slapping sounds rang out. Lin Lin was still thinking that this time, she was ordered to leave the palace. This time, 5th Madame would definitely stand on her side. Who would have thought that there would be such an outcome? When the palm hit her face, she did not react. It was only after being slapped a few times that she became clear-headed and cried out that she had been wronged. At this time, Sumaner had already entered the inner chamber. Xiao Yun followed by the side with a face full of confusion and doubt. Sumaner trusted this maidservant who had followed her for many years. She didn't hide anything and told her the gist of the matter. Xiao Yun, who heard the truth, was also shocked. There's actually such a thing? Doesn't that mean Lin Lin is also one of the accomplices? Then what are we? Yes, what are we? Sumaner repeated this sentence with a bitter smile on her face. Sumaner finally knew how much pressure this matter would bring her. Even if after this matter, her husband did not blame her, what would those maids in the palace think? What would those high officials in Crimson City think? It seemed that she had to do something. Xiao Yun, go and interrogate Lin Lin with Captain Tai later. I want to know what she did behind our backs. Sumaner bit her lips and said, Yes, ma'am. Xiao Yun also knew the importance of this matter and hurriedly agreed. However, she still had some doubts as she asked, What if Lin Lin doesn't say it? She has a lot of ideas. We can use any method. She won't keep it a secret. Oh right, doesn't she still have a father outside the palace who drinks every day? If she doesn't say it, then she will be harming her father. As Sumaner spoke, her eyes revealed a terrifying aura. People say that if you don't experience some things, you will never grow up and mature. And this time, Sumaner had obviously grown up a lot. Hearing that even her family was being threatened, Xiao Yun knew what to do. And with her father's threat, she was not afraid that Lin Lin would not say it. But what should she do after saying it? She had no choice but to ask, How should we deal with Lin Lin? Kill her. As long as she cooperates, you can tell her that her father can still live out his remaining years in peace. She seemed to have used the last bit of her strength to say this. Sumaner waved her hand at Xiao Yun, meaning that she was tired and needed a good rest. Xiao Yun left, but she did not know that Sumaner, who was in the bedroom, was not sleeping. Instead, she was thinking of a very big plan. A department that would eventually be comparable to the Security Bureau became a prototype that night. After reporting it to Yang Chendong, it was given a new name, the Central Intelligence Agency. And the boss of this Central Intelligence Agency was Su Minair. Its appearance would greatly make up for some of the negligence of the Security Bureau. In the future, it would make countless military achievements. This was probably something that even Yang Chendong did not foresee. After Lin Lin was slapped 30 times, she, who had a mouth full of blood, was dragged to the woodshed at the side. There, Xiao Yun set up a temporary torture chamber. Whether it was coercion or enticement, in the end, she found out everything she wanted to know. The result was still very gratifying. Lin Lin was only after Yang Tieju's family background and money. She did not really participate in what he did. This made Su Minair, who knew everything after the fact, heave a sigh of relief. She was guilty, but her sin was not that big. She could finally face Yang Chendong and her sisters. Lin Lin was finished. The father and son of the Yang family, who were still unaware of all this, still placed their hopes on him. After waiting for a long time, no one came. Instead, a secret agent from the Security Bureau came to the Yang residence. He came to Yang Wu's ear and whispered something softly. Yang Wu was originally standing there calmly, but after hearing the whispered news, his entire person became unwell. His eyes widened as he looked at Yang Shan and the captured Yang Taiju. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. "Good, very good. I didn't expect that you were not only after money, but also have greater ambitions. Men search. Turn the entire Yang residence upside down 3 times. Even a tile must be smashed into pieces. Absolutely not allow any item to remain intact." Yang Wu suddenly gave this ruthless order, and the Lung Feng soldiers who came with him agreed and began to move. Facing the ruthless Lang Feng warriors, Yang Shan wanted to stop them, but he realized that it was useless. He could not help but ask Yang Wu, "Master Yang Wu, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? Why are you asking me about the good things you did?" Yang Wu's face was overflowing with anger. He had just received news from Bureau Chief Yang San. Chun Shuquan said that once when he was drunk, Yang Taiju boasted that he had prepared some weapons and armor in his residence. If things changed, they could cause havoc in Raymen City and even threaten the safety of the palace in order to protect themselves. Once the news came out, Yang Wu could no longer remain calm. If such a thing really happened, then he had let down the young master's trust. In that case, even if he died, he would not be able to thank the world. Facing such a person, how could he still be courteous at this moment? Yang Wu was angry, so the Lung Feng warriors also began to act. The huge Yang residence was quickly turned over and many things were found. There were more than 4 million taels of gold and silver notes. This was equivalent to Baiming's or Nanming's annual income. After Yang Taiju started smuggling, he had earned so much in just a few times. This did not even include the huge expenses. From this, one could see how big the profits were. Other than the gold and silver, there were actually 2088 rifles, 300 sharp swords and spears, hundreds of sets of armor, and dozens of boxes of bullets and grenades. When these things were piled up like a small mountain in the courtyard of the Yang residence, Yang Shan finally lost his imposing manner and fell to the ground with a plop. At this moment, Yang Shan finally understood how big his son's ambition was. He also finally understood what it meant to raise a tiger for calamity. It was just that he was raising his son. The moment these things came out, Yang Taiju lowered his arrogant head. He knew that he was done for. On the other hand, Leng Song was sweating profusely. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen if these weapons suddenly launched an attack. Even if Crimson City did not fall into chaos, it would be difficult to protect some important institutions. Investigate, investigate, investigate for me. How did these things appear here? These are not things that can be bought with money. Yang Wu roared as he looked at the grenades and 88 rifles. Then, his gaze landed on Yang Shan. On behalf of the 6th Young Master, I announce that from now on, you are no longer the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Men, take him away and lock him in jail. Ma Dali will be the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs. You will also be in charge of the interrogation of Yang Shan. As Yang Shan's deputy, Ma Dali understood his superior very well. Letting someone who understood you to interrogate you would achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yang Wu did not doubt this point. The Yang family was finished, and that night some people who had close ties with the Yang family were implicated. More than 50 officials were arrested. Among them were a few company cadres and a battalion commander from Cold Front. And this matter had only just begun. As the interrogation progressed, more and more people were implicated. Even the Bureau's Director General, Shun Yu, was invited away by the Security Bureau the next morning. The person in charge of the interrogation was none other than Director General Yang San. Using interrogation instead of interrogation meant that Yang San was under Yang Qindong's orders to reprimand Shin Yu. The gist of his words was that his job was very special. It was a job that offended others, but he did not have to be afraid of offending others because he had the sixth young master backing him up. He knew how hard it was for him and how he was a person, but if he was afraid of offending others, he could quit his job. He could go home and retire. He could also be given a leisurely department to pass the days. But in short, he had to do his job well as long as he was in office. Otherwise, he would not occupy this position. Facing Director General Yang San, who was under the orders of the Duke of Loyalty, Shun Yu did not dare be careless. He immediately nodded to express his understanding and promised that such a thing would not happen again. If he encountered any injustice or lawlessness, he would be the first to stand up. At the same time, he thanked the Duke of Loyalty for his trust in him. Chapter 738. People are like this. Once they are in a high position, they are not willing to give up their power. Shin Yu was like this. After experiencing the prestige of the Monitoring Bureau chief, he was reluctant to leave. Even if he knew that what he was about to do would offend a lot of people, he was still unwilling to leave. Since Shin Yu had already expressed his stance, Yang San also allowed him to make his choice. However, before they parted ways, he reminded him, "This matter is not over yet. There will be others who will come looking for you. You just have to wait. I hope that you can perform well." He did not say who was looking for him, nor did he say what it was about. Yang San left, leaving Shun Yu with a mystery in his heart. This mystery did not last long. Just as he was about to get off work, someone from the Security Bureau came to invite Shin Yu to the famous Min Lu Fu restaurant in the city for a banquet. Shin Yu knew about Min Lu Fu. Usually, many people with status were willing to hold their banquets there. He also heard that the background of the restaurant was very strong, but outsiders did not know the specifics. Since Yang San sent someone to inform him, and since he had already said hello, Shin Yu would naturally go. After getting off work, he went straight to Min Lu Fu restaurant. When he arrived at the restaurant, which covered an area of more than 10,000 square meters, there were already people waiting for him outside. When they saw him arrive, they led him straight to the third floor. In the private room on the third floor, when Shin Yu opened the door and entered, he realized that he was not the first to arrive. The 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, and the Political Department's Mo Chang Yu had arrived before him. Gao Xiong was the commander of the Navy's 1st Division. It was said that the Duke of Loyalty wanted to expand the division into an army. If nothing unexpected happened, this person would become the 1st Navy commander. Ji Chang Yu was one of the members of the Political Department. He was also the political commissar of the Army's 1st Division. There were already rumors that he would become the 1st Vice Minister of the Political Department. One of them represented the Navy's 1st Division, and the other represented the Army's 1st Division. Their arrival seemed to explain some things. When the three of them met, they naturally had to exchange greetings. However, their personal relationship wasn't very deep. This had to do with their identities and statuses, and also because they each represented different forces. It was impossible for them to sit together and drink and chat merrily. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. This sentence was also very appropriate to use here. Even though Yangxia hadn't been established for a long time, and many of them were newcomers, Fighting seemed to be something that humans were born with. It was the kind that didn't need to be taught. You could learn it very well and play it very smoothly. Since there were benefits, there would be fights. When it came to who could get more and who could only get less, a struggle was inevitable. Yang Chendong couldn't do anything about this. Of course, this was something he was happy to see. The people below him were all as good as one person. This was not good for his management in the future. The private room was very spacious, at least 100 square meters. The three of them sat in 3 different directions, and soon there was silence. Perhaps they were all wondering why Director Yang San had invited them here. What was he going to do? What kind of performance should they have? Just as the 3 of them were still immersed in their fantasies, the door suddenly opened and 2 people came in. When the 2 of them appeared, the 3 people in the room hurriedly stood up, their faces filled with respect from the bottom of their hearts. There was no other way. The people who came were the director of the Security Bureau, Yang San, and the future 6th Madam, Luan Xiaoyu. Yes, the one who came with Yang San was Luan Xiaoyu. Not only did she come, but she also walked in front. From this point alone, she should be the host of today's meal. Hello, Director Luan. Because Luan Xiaoyu also had the identity of Director of Publicity, before she was brought into the palace by Yang Chendong's legal wife, everyone was used to calling her Director Luan. Hello, everyone. I've made you wait for a long time. I'm really sorry. I just came out from City Lord Yu's place. Luan Xiaoyu had a smile on her face. Although she was very young and was still a few years away from 18 years old, the long-term training had shown the results. She showed a very mature side. Even when she saw 3 people with great power, she didn't show the slightest bit of fear. Luan Xiaoyu was very clear in her heart who gave her everything today and why the 3 people in front of her respected her. It was precisely because of this that after receiving Yang Chendong's telegram, she quickly returned to Crimson City from below. She began to carry out the following reforms, investigating the other movements. After the incident with Yang Chendong felt that it was always right to nip the problem in the bud. He couldn't always see the serious consequences before coming out to take care of everything. If that was the case, it would only cause unnecessary internal friction. After making this decision, he placed this heavy responsibility on Luan Xiaoyu. Yang Chendong knew that Luan Xiaoyu was still young, but this person was absolutely loyal to him. Her love for him was also the purest. He didn't have to worry about her betrayal. Moreover, as his woman, she should experience more storms. After all, he couldn't imagine what kind of achievements he would achieve in the future. If the women by his side were too ordinary, then it would really harm them. In the future, when Yang Dong entered the headquarters, he had watched some TV dramas when he had nothing to do. There were quite a few dramas in Guangdong. Although he didn't want that scene to happen to him, as his woman, she had to have the ability to protect herself. This was him helping Luan Xiaoyu grow up in advance. After accepting this mission, Luan Xiaoyu also knew that this was Dong Shuai's way of reminding her. So she made up her mind to perform better to prove herself. Thus she came. Not only did she come, she even went to Yu Qian's office before coming. She chatted with this senior for a long time and decided on the direction of her work. The only regret was that Yu Qian did not accept Luan Xiaoyu's invitation. Even if it was Yang Chendong's intention, the result would be the same. In Yu Qian's words, his main job was still the development of Qiqian City. As for the other work, he would do his best to cooperate, but he would not delve too deeply into it. After all, a person's energy was limited. Yu Qian's rejection was actually for Luan Xiaoyu's sake. Because with his prestige, if he really participated in this matter, she would have nothing to do with it. When she really achieved results, her achievements would also be covered up. Thus, Luan Xiaoyu was grateful from the bottom of her heart for the senior's care and guidance. The moment she entered the private room, Luan Xiaoyu told everyone about her meeting with Yu Qian. This was equivalent to telling everyone that what she wanted to do not only obtain the consent and attention of the 6th young master. This could be seen from her own identity and the fact that Bureau Chief Yang San accompanied her throughout the entire process. She also obtained the full cooperation of the city lord, Yu Qian. The 3 people present were all extremely intelligent. They immediately understood what he meant and the smiles on their faces widened a little. Since a matter had received so much support, there was no way they could refuse. Luan Xiaoyu walked into the private room, and after greeting the three of them, she did not immediately sit down. Instead, she walked to the window of the private room and looked out. At this time, the sky was already dark, but the street lights in Crimson City were already lit up. One could see commoners coming and going on the streets. It was very lively. Not far away, some of the nearby residential areas were also lit up with electric lights. Looking from afar, it really looked like tens of thousands of homes were lit up. According to Yang Qindong's intention, there was no curfew in Crimson City unless there were special circumstances. As time passed, not only were the commoners used to it, it was still very lively even at night. There were even some tea houses, restaurants, brothels, and casinos that had better business at night. This promoted the rich life of the entire city and promoted the economic development of this place. Yes, there were brothels and casinos in Crimson City. However, these industries were not something that everyone could do. They required a special industry certificate issued by the city lord's mansion, and the taxes were heavy. On this point, Yang Chandong was also clear that there were some things that could not be truly prohibited. Rather than letting others secretly hide and do it, it was better to openly take it out and standardize it. He could also collect more business taxes and use it to serve the army and the people. Wouldn't that be better? So lively. Looking out the window, Luan Xiaoyu could not help but say with emotion, "Yes, so lively. This kind of scene can't be seen even in Beiming or southern Ming's capital." Xin Yu also stood up and came to the window. Looking at everything in front of him, he also sighed with emotion. Such a lively place needs to be protected by us. Just based on this, we should all feel proud. Finally, Luan Xiaoyu's seemingly unintentional words began to lead to the main topic of today's conversation. Hearing this, Xin Yu and the other two's expressions turned cold. No one said anything. After all, Yang Tieju's matter had just happened. If everyone sang praises now, it would be too much of a bootlicker. The others did not say anything. Only Luan Xiaoyu continued. "Today, I called everyone here because of my idea, and also because of the sixth young master's idea. After Yang Tieju's matter, he even secretly hid weapons. This might be a special case, but at the same time, it also shows that we did not do our job well. There should be many people and departments involved in this matter, but we were completely unaware of it. In the end, we had to rely on the sixth young master to remind us what to do. Doesn't everyone feel ashamed because of this?" Luan Xiaoyu's voice became louder and louder. At the end, there was a hint of reprimand in her voice. Chapter 739. She couldn't be blamed for being so angry. There were indeed quite a few people involved in this matter. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's just talk about the weapons found in Yang Shan's residence. Let's not talk about the 2088 rifles for now. Just this one alone was enough to implicate a lot of people. What about the remaining swords and spears? Those were all products of the arsenal, far from the hoes and kitchen knives in the hands of ordinary people. They could be seen everywhere on the streets. These weapons were all made of iron, steel, and alloys. The production of every finished product was recorded. Not only that, so many weapons also required a lot of energy to be maintained daily. Otherwise, after a long time, the weapons would rust. In order to prevent this, not to mention wiping them frequently, they also needed to use vegetable oil. That was also a product of the military, and not something that ordinary people could buy with money. The weapons found in the Yang residence were all as shiny as new. It could be seen that they were usually maintained by people. Then the question was, who provided these materials? It was likely that many people would be implicated in the investigation. And these people sold the forbidden products to Yang Taiju. Did they not think about the consequences and what would happen? There were also the 3 cargo ships and dozens of carriages of goods that were hijacked. Could be said that there were all kinds of things inside, such as divine realm, cosmetics, and women's clothes. Other than that, there were also things like cigarettes, ham sausages, canned food, and instant noodles. Many of them were only provided to the army, and had not been circulated on the market. But now they were all smuggled out. Could Yang Taizhu alone do all these things? It was obviously unreasonable. If this matter was thoroughly investigated, who knew how many people would be implicated? After saying so much, it was just to clarify one thing, and that was that there were probably many people involved in Yang Taizhu's matter, and even more people knew about it. But why did the higher-ups not make a move? Could it be that they did not know? That was absolutely impossible. If that was the case, these people would not be in high positions. In the end, there was only one possibility, and that was that too many people knew about it, but they dealt with it with the mentality that it was better to avoid trouble. Everyone had the idea of sweeping the snow in front of their own door. As long as they did not participate in some matters, it would not be wrong. With such a mentality, Yang Taizhu was able to do things like a fish in water, which made the problem become more serious. This time, if Yu Mian hadn't arrived at the origin city, met Yang Qindong and voiced out his concerns, he was afraid that if he had waited for a while, once it erupted, it would have caused an unimaginable result. This was also the reason why Yang Qindong was so angry and wanted to investigate the source of his investigation. Luan Xiaoyu closed the window in front of her, and the private room quickly fell into silence. Her voice was also clearly transmitted to the ears of the 4 people present. Let's talk business first. The dishes will be served later. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone, including Yang San, sat up straight and entered a state of semi-war. Luan Xiaoyu was very satisfied with everyone's attitude. She lightly nodded and casually said, "The 6th young master has ordered us to form a group of 5, which is the 5 of us. From today onwards, we will carry out a self-inspection for 3 months. Every local official, regardless of their position, was required to be thoroughly investigated. Every military officer up to the rank of a platoon in the army was also required to be investigated from head to toe. Once a problem is found, it must be verified immediately. If it is confirmed, what should be done is done. If there is no problem, they must be reassured and continue their work. If there is an outstanding person, they should be rewarded. Let's put it this way. The 6th young master has handed over the authority to deal with matters to the 5 of us. We have a great responsibility. Do you have confidence?" "Yes." At this moment, no one would raise a different opinion. This was the 6th young master's order. If anyone dared to stand out and say no, their future achievements would come to an end. Naturally, more importantly, this kind of self-inspection was very necessary. This was also a method to prevent something similar to Yang Taizhu from happening again. "All right." Seeing everyone's support, Luan Xiaoyu continued, "As for the specific details of the work, we will have to discuss it in detail later. The first thing we need to do now is to announce Yang Taizhu's case to the public. The investigation and evidence collection will be left to the Special Inspector Bureau and the Security Bureau. After everything is clarified, we will immediately hold a public trial in the city. We need to let everyone in the city know what is going on. Yes, our bureau will definitely cooperate fully. The Security Bureau will also cooperate fully." Yang San and Xin Yu quickly expressed their stance. "Very good." Luan Xiaoyu continued nodding. Then, a sly smile appeared in her eyes. "Things have to be done one step at a time. Next, let's proceed with the first item, eating." He. The words eat eased the tense atmosphere. Even Yang San, who was usually reserved, chuckled at this moment. The 5-man team was established, and the self-inspection activities were in full swing. This would eventually affect all the departments. All the cadres and officers carried out their activities quickly and ruthlessly. On the first day, more than 40 cadres from various departments were taken away. Among them, 6 were military officers. On the second day, more than 50 were taken away. On the third day, more than 70 were taken away. On the fourth day, more than 90 were taken away. It wasn't until the 5th day that the number began to decrease. More than 60 people were taken away. Then, the number rose and fell. More and more cadres were taken away for questioning. Some of them couldn't come out after entering the 5-man team. These were all people with major problems. There were also some who were released a few days after entering, but they had already been demoted or even fired from their positions. They directly became ordinary citizens. There were also some who were released not long after and continued to shine brightly at work. There were even some who were directly promoted after coming out, replacing the position of a superior who had made a mistake. There were some who were promoted by 1, 2, or 3 ranks. This was a huge reshuffle. It had been about 5 years since Crimson City became Yangxia's headquarters. Many of them had benefited from this, and many of them had their lives changed. From having problems with food and drink in the past, they were now living a life of luxury. However, this still made some people unhappy. They felt that they should have received more. Even if Yang Chundong implemented a high salary policy, and their salaries were enough to cover their family's expenses, there were still some who couldn't help but reach out. In the face of such a greedy person, of course, Yang Chundong wouldn't be polite. This time, he checked again and eliminated all the black sheep with such thoughts. One could imagine that, after this incident, the atmosphere of the entire Crimson City would change. In the future, the efficiency of work would also become faster and faster. The self-inspection activities were still ongoing, and many people's fates had changed. Some who benefited from their work were promoted, while some who were greedy received their deserved retribution. At this moment, Yang Chundong sent another telegram to Luan Xiaoyu. A new policy to raise the treatment of officials had been implemented, and that was the special ticketing system. The so-called special ticketing system was similar to the planned economy in the early days of the Republic, where the citizens would be given food stamps to purchase meat and grains. Yang Chundong requested for the officials to be given a certain percentage of their monthly salary. Once they had such ticketing, they would have priority to purchase some sought-after goods in the market. For example, cigarettes, all sorts of beverages, bottles of strong liquor, magical mirrors, high-grade cosmetics, and beautiful women's clothing. For this, Yang Chundong requested for a store to be set up in Crimson City. This store had a complete range of goods, and the quantity was sufficient. However, there was a difference, and that was that everything had to be purchased with special ticketing systems. Here, silver and even gold were useless. The reason for such a decision was that there were too many officials in the 5-man investigation team. In addition, the momentum was very large, which caused many people to feel fear. There were actually not enough officials to go around. In order to make more capable people work for him, Yang Chundong decided to give them some benefits. Under such temptation, he was not afraid that some people would not be loyal to him. It had to be said that when the special ticketing system appeared, the ticketing systems in the hands of the officials became popular goods. Although there were a lot of factories in Crimson City, and a lot of good things because there were too many merchants outside, the supply could not meet the demand. As a result, even in Crimson City, some items were difficult to buy. With the special ticketing system in the store, those good things that could not be bought outside were actually available here. The ticketing system became a hard currency, and some of the rich people started to have ideas about the ticketing systems in the hands of the officials. The officials were also humans, and they also wanted to live a better life. The ticketing systems in their hands were not enough for their own use, so how could they sell them? Even if some people wanted to sell a portion of it for some reason, it was difficult to satisfy the needs of more rich people. Over time, some people had no choice but to give up on buying it and think of ways to become officials themselves. Yang Chundong's move caused the number of people who applied for the official exam to increase by a lot, greatly alleviating the pressure and fear brought to everyone by the 5-man team. Crimson City finally continued to move forward amidst the wind and rain. After many new officials took up their positions, the effects in all aspects were indeed much faster than before. Just from this point alone, it seemed that the previous efforts were worth it. Just as the 5 young misses were carrying out their operation with great momentum, Sumaner was not idle either. She left the palace several times to look for good seedlings in the CIA. Her request was a little strange. She requested for all of them to be women because she believed that some things were more convenient for women to do than men. Chapter 740. After obtaining Yang Chundong's approval and support, Sumaner not only received a large amount of funds for her activities, but she was also allowed to enter the refugee camp in Crimson City to find suitable seedlings among the 5 million people who made the deal with the Southern Ming Empire. Under such generous conditions, girls and women were chosen by Suminair one after another. They became the first batch of important personnel in the CIA and became the cornerstone of the CIA's development. In this incident, many people were also caught in the crossfire because they did not perform their duties properly. There were many people in the military and the local government. However, at the same time, the working environment became more pure. Even the relationship between the military and the political department was eased to a certain extent. Lung Song's name was not in the 5-man team. Although he was the political commissar of the 1st Division Mo Changyu, and it looked the same, only he knew that it was because he was the main force in the confrontation between the military and the political department. There was also a period of time when he was very close to Yang Shanjia. This was clearly a warning from the 6th young master to him. From the moment the 5-man team was formed, the Smartling Song immediately changed his strategy. He no longer resisted the work of the political department. Instead, he cooperated with it. This also allowed the military's work to be greatly improved. When the news reached Yang Qindong's ears in the first city, he smiled and was very satisfied. If a force wanted to develop, it was just like life. It would always encounter problems. The key was the kind of mentality one had to solve the problem and not blindly escape and endure. Only by cutting off one's wrist would there be a new life. Otherwise, even if one was still alive, one would not be a healthy person. The matter of Crimson City had returned to the right path. In the process of returning, there would definitely be some pain. Some people and old friends would also be cut off from fate. However, the path that should be taken still had to be taken. The development of the first city was also imminent. These days, Yang Qindong not only had his eyes on Crimson City, but also sent a few telegrams to understand the situation. The development and construction of the first city were not lagging behind. These days, Yu Mian woke up early and slept late every day. He finally understood the situation in the city and had a general guideline for what to do next. Today, he took the initiative to come to the city lord's mansion to report to Yang Qindong. He was told that the 6th young master was inspecting the work in the logistics department. The so-called logistics department was just a general term. Because the first city was not as complete as the Crimson City, many of the supplies transported from outside were piled up in the logistics department. Today, Yang Qindong came here to inquire about the situation of the supplies. In addition, he came to see the situation of the soldiers receiving the new weapons here, the Big Dipper crossbow, also known as Big Dipper steel crossbow. The so-called Big Dipper crossbow was a new type of crossbow made of pure steel. Unlike the traditional ones, it was more pocket-sized. However, being short didn't mean that it wasn't powerful. On the contrary, because the spring was strong enough, it could shoot a distance of 100 meters. This kind of Big Dipper crossbow could be tied to the arm and shot at the enemy. More importantly, it was equipped with a mechanism that allowed it to fire 7 arrows at once. This greatly increased its lethality and increased its chances of victory on the battlefield. With the current ability of the Crimson City Munitions Factory, it wasn't a problem to create a Type 81 assault rifle. However, it would still take a lot of time to create a qualified Type 95 assault rifle. How to save the use of the Type 95 assault rifle and what weapon to use to replace it was the problem that the people of the Crimson City Munitions Factory had to think about and face during this period of time. Someone suggested that, if it didn't work, the Cold Front Army should use the Type 81 assault rifle again. However, this idea was quickly rejected. Not to mention that with the current factory ability of the munitions factory, the number of Type 81 assault rifles that they could create was limited and could not be provided to all the Cold Front Army soldiers. Just by giving up on the Type 95 assault rifle, once that person became used to it, the research and development work would only be slower. Then, no one knew when they could create the real Type 95 assault rifle. The people of the munitions factory also needed to be stressed. This debate was finally reported to Yang Qindong in the form of a telegram. He waved his pen and gave the final decision. The development of the Type 95 assault rifle could not be stopped. They could also increase the number of people and funds. For the time being, they could find a weapon to replace the Type 95 assault rifle as a transitional product. Under such a decree, the Big Dipper crossbow appeared. How is it? How's the accuracy? In the logistics team, Yang Chendong looked at the 3rd Division's division commander Wu Shang and political commissar Chun Bo, who came to collect the equipment, and asked with a smile. Reporting to the 6th young master, the Big Dipper crossbow is very good. Chun Bo immediately stood at attention and said respectfully, the crossbow can shoot continuously, which is equivalent to shooting continuously. Moreover, the size of the crossbow is smaller, so more of them can be carried on the body. After training, the accuracy can also be improved. However, the shooting distance is too short, only 100 meters. The 3rd Division's division commander Wu Shang also gave his evaluation. In the end, he pointed out the shortcomings and expressed his dissatisfaction. Alright, this is just a crossbow. Even if it can shoot continuously, it's still a crossbow. How far do you want to shoot? Moreover, when the enemy is far away, you can still use the Type 95 assault rifle. Yang Chendong patted Wu Shang's shoulder and warned others to be content with what they had. Although the Type 95 assault rifle was used for a long time, there would be some wear and tear and damage. However, with the efforts of Wu Hua and the other blacksmiths, as long as the damage wasn't too severe, simple repairs could still be done. If it really didn't work, Yang Chendong could just use the big warehouse. The Type 95 assault rifle was stored in boxes and boxes. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to give enough pressure to the Crimson City arsenal, he wouldn't have thought of using a weapon like the Big Dipper crossbow. Of course, Yang Chendong's actions were also a display of confidence. The current Lung Feng's Division 3 division, even if they didn't have guns, their battle strength was still very strong. This kind of army was what he needed. Normally, they would use cold weapons. Against strong enemies, they would use guns. With this combination, the Lung Feng division would definitely become the strongest army in the world. Only then would they have the strength to conquer more places and territories. Wu Shang also knew that his expectations were a little too high, so he chuckled and nodded. 6th young master, please be at ease. The 3 of us have been diligently training. Even if we use the same weapons as our opponents, we will still be able to win. Yes, that's what I want. Yang Chendong laughed, showing that he was in a good mood. Young master, City Lord Yumian is here. While Yang Chendong was still chatting and commenting on the Big Dipper crossbow with the officers of the 3 divisions, Beta Persei walked to Yang Chendong's side and reported, Okay, I'll go take a look. Motioning for Wu Shang, Chun Bo, and the others to continue working, Yang Chendong turned around and walked out of the logistics group's gate under the protection of a group of guards. He saw Yu Mian waiting there. When he saw Yang Chendong, the first thing he said was, 6th young master, I want a farm near the first city. Farm. Yang Chendong looked at Yu Mian in a daze and became interested. Continue. Seeing that Yang Chendong did not object to him immediately, Yu Mian knew that his idea should be feasible. He immediately said, 6th young master, I've already investigated. The reason why the people here are very poor and sometimes even have problems eating is not because they are not hardworking, nor is it because the soil here is not good. Although it's called yellow soil, as long as you plant properly, you can still grow good crops. They don't dare to plant because safety has always been a problem. The Mongols lived by herding. This was a way of life left behind by their ancestors. It was also because it was more flexible. On the grassland, the strong preyed on the weak. The strong would always be able to obtain more resources. Imagine what kind of strength did an ordinary person have. If he chose to farm, it would be equivalent to imprisoning himself in a certain area. Usually it was fine, but once he encountered an enemy attack and danger came, he could drive the flock of sheep away. However, he could not take the crops planted on the ground with him. That would only benefit the invading enemy. As time passed, no one thought about farming anymore. On this point, Yu Mian had talked to many people in the city, including many Han people. They did indeed live by farming, and when they first came to the grassland, they were not used to it. However, because there was no safe place, they could only give up on the idea of farming and being self-sufficient. Now, with the appearance of the mercenaries and their strength, they had become some sort of guarantee, allowing some people to see hope again. Thus, they made this request. After Yu Mian investigated for a while, he also felt that this matter was feasible. Thus, he came to find Yang Chendong and proposed his idea. Yes, it's farming. I've thought about it. Not only can he solve the problem of food for the army on the spot, once the people have land, they will also have a strong sense of belonging. This way, they will be able to gather people's hearts faster and make the first city prosperous and prosperous. Yu Mian said excitedly. Yes, this is a good idea. However, it's already August now. In addition to the cold winter here, I'm afraid it's too late this year. Yang Chendong nodded and began to analyze the reality of the matter from the actual operation. Yes, it's too late this year. In fact, we don't have the seeds of the crops. All of this needs time to prepare. I've already thought about it. We can contact Crimson City now and ask them to provide more seeds. We can wait for them to be delivered in spring next year. As for now, we can first open up the fertile land, measure it, and distribute it to the citizens who are already in the first city. This way, they will have hope, and the first city can also attract more people to come and seek refuge. Yu Mian still said with an excited face. From this point, it could be seen that he had indeed put in some effort. Yang Chendong did not answer immediately. Instead, he nodded after thinking carefully. I think it's possible. Then you can go ahead and do it. This way, we can open up the fertile land and tell the people that they don't have to worry about their safety. As long as the mercenaries are here, they will protect their fruits of victory. When the enemy comes, we can just beat them away. Chapter 741. Yang Chendong suddenly thought of using greenhouses to grow crops. However, since he did not have any fertile land and had not made the necessary preparations, he decided to let Crimson City prepare the greenhouses and greenhouses. Before these things arrived, there was no need to inform Yu Mian. Yu Mian did not know what Yang Chendong was thinking, but he was waiting for these words. On the prairie, without sufficient strength, one would not dare to do anything. Now that he had the protection of Yang Chendong and the army, he was overjoyed. Yes, sixth young master. Please wait for the good news next year. Yu Mian left happily, leaving Yang Chendong behind to mutter in his heart. Looks like there's a need to use force to intimidate others. If you want others to be afraid of you, then you have to learn how to show your fist and let others know how developed your muscles are and how powerful you are. Just as Yang Chendong was thinking about who to find as his opponent, an opportunity came knocking on his door. That night, the director of the First City Security Bureau, Feng Liang, came to visit. He brought with him news that someone was investigating the situation in the first city and was even trying to instigate a rebellion among the commoners in the city. Coincidentally, the mercenary army had won the battle and defeated the 50,000 cavalry led by Agador, allowing many of the commoners in the city to see hope. Some of the young and strong among them wanted to join the army. While contributing their strength, they also wanted to fight for a future for themselves. However, because there were too many captives from the battlefield and the mercenary army's food and fodder were all supplied from the outside, the number of troops had already reached a limit and could not be increased anymore. Thus, they did not choose to expand the army, and the young and strong people in the city naturally did not have the chance to join the mercenary army. At that time, it just so happened that Feng Liang was dealing with this matter. Due to various considerations, he gathered a few good young seedlings together and established a militia system, allowing them to be responsible for some of the security in the city. It was impossible to give them food, but they could still be given some silver every month. It was precisely this action that caused many people from the Security Bureau to appear in the city. And this time, it was these people who had contributed. They discovered that there were outsiders who had entered the city and were still contacting the commoners. They felt that something was wrong, so they took the initiative to contact them. In the end, they found out that the other party's identity and purpose were actually trying to persuade the commoners to rebel. This was tantamount to breaking the stable life they had painstakingly obtained. How could these secret agents agree? They immediately took the man and sent him to Feng Liang. Who is it, and who does it represent? There was not the slightest bit of nervousness on Yang Chendong's face. He had been looking for someone to show off his muscles, and now that someone had come knocking on his door, he had no reason to be unhappy. The sixth young master. Feng, of course, from the Golden Family, the Mongol, the Golden Horde. The Golden Family? Yang Qindong nodded thoughtfully. After the death of Genghis Khan, only his direct descendants, namely the descendants of Jochi, Chagatai, Ogdi, and Talyui, were known as the Golden Family and qualified to inherit the throne of the Khans. After Talyui's son, Monk, became the great Khan of the Mongol, the range was further narrowed down to the descendants of Talyui. Later, the Yuan dynasty emperors and the Ming dynasty Tatar Khans, such as Dayan Khan, were all from this line. The descendants of Genghis Khan established 4 Khanates, namely the Golden Horde, also known as the Kipchak Khanate, the Chagatai Khanate, the Ogdi Khanate, and the Ilkhanate. The Golden Horde was the territory of Genghis Khan's eldest son, Jochi, and grandson, Zibidu. Because they were the descendants of Genghis Khan, they were called the Golden Family by the Mongols. They had great influence in the entire grassland. The Golden Horde was now the most powerful branch of the Golden Family. Until now, they had occupied and ruled Russia, which spanned across the Eurasian continent, for more than 200 years. Yes, they are from the Golden Family. This Wuxia relied on this relationship and was very arrogant. Even if he was captured, he did not have any intention of lowering his head. Feng Liang nodded and reported. He did not dare not to report anything that was related to the Golden Family. After all, this family represented the Orthodox and had great influence on the grassland. For example, the leader of the Walla, Yeshen, was originally a strong military commander. He was also quite capable and ruled a strong grassland army. But why did he disappear in the end? After all, he was not a member of the Golden Family. His force was also seen as a rebel army by the Mongols and was not orthodox. It was possible to be strong for a short period of time, but after a long period of time, everyone would ostracize you. If you still wanted to be king, you would be digging your own grave. Now that Yang Qindong was about to face the Golden Family, it was inevitable that he would have to think more about it. Feng Liang stood there and did not say anything. He was waiting for the sixth young master's decision. If the sixth young master was not afraid of the other party, then of course he would teach the other party a lesson. If he had some concerns, then he would let the other party go. Sometimes showing weakness did not mean that one was really weak. It was just a preparation to be stronger. This kind of waiting did not take long. Yang Qindong said, "Interrogate this person carefully. The Golden Horde is thousands of miles away. We have to find out how this person came to the first city so quickly. Interrogate him carefully. I am afraid he will not speak casually." Feng Liang said with some difficulty. "Haha, if he does not speak, then you will use tricks. Don't say that the Security Bureau has no way to deal with him. In short, find out all the details about him and learn more about the Golden Horde. If the conditions are right, we will choose to take the initiative to attack." Yang Qindong looked at Feng Liang with a faint smile. When he said this, Feng Liang was shocked. He did not expect that the sixth young master was not afraid of the Golden Horde and even wanted to attack the Golden Horde. In this case, he certainly knew what to do. He immediately stood at attention, saluted and said confidently, "Sixth young master, please rest assured. I will definitely find out if he wet the bed when he was young." Since Yang Qindong had made up his mind, Feng Liang did not have any worries. When he returned to the Security Bureau's prison, the one who would suffer would be Wuxia. Relying on his background of the Golden Horde, Wuxia was used to being arrogant. Wherever he went, who would not give him some face? This was also the reason why he dared to go against Feng Liang. This was also the reason why he dared to openly collude with the people in the city to oppose the mercenaries. According to Wuxia, with his identity, even if he attracted the attention of the mercenaries, they would not dare to do anything to him. Didn't the Han people say that envoys would not be killed when two armies fought? Moreover, he was a member of the Golden Horde. But what he did not expect was that Feng Liang, who was very polite before, suddenly showed his fangs and tested all kinds of torture on him. Wuxia, who was used to being arrogant wherever he went, could not endure such pain. Even if his name was translated into Chinese, it meant loyalty. But at this moment, when faced with torture, he chose not to be loyal and told everything he knew. Just as Yang Chundong thought, Wu Qixi did not come from the Golden Horde. Time did not allow for it. The reason why he appeared in the beginning city in such a short time was that he came from the Gobi Mongol. As a member of the Golden Horde, Wu Qixi did not allow others to establish a strong force on the grassland. Anyone who dared to do so would be regarded as a provocation to the Golden Horde. So, he stood up and came to the beginning city. After getting all the information he wanted, Feng Liang reappeared in the city lord's mansion early the next morning. With a pair of slightly bloodshot eyes, he reported the situation to Yang Chundong. Gobi Mongol? They really don't learn from their mistakes. Yang Chundong couldn't help but think of Tuoya's appearance in his mind, especially the pair of magnificent big breasts. It was really difficult for people to forget after seeing it. Yes, it's the Gobi Mongol. According to Wu Qixi, after he arrived there, he was warmly received by Khan Sud. Soon after, he heard about our beginning city, and then he volunteered to come. Feng Liang also smiled. He had a feeling that the sixth young master would not let the Gobi Mongol go easily this time. His feeling was soon confirmed. Yang Chundong narrowed his eyes and said, "Very well. After all, we have to show off our muscles. Then we'll choose them." Yang Chundong was determined to send troops to the Gobi Mongol. Wu Qixi's matter was just an excuse. He wanted to use this matter to warn some of the surrounding forces how powerful the mercenaries were. They'd better not have any ideas about it. Otherwise, the person who would die would be you, not me. He was determined to take action. Soon, all kinds of information about the Gobi Mongol were sent to Yang Chundong like snowflakes. The Gobi Mongol was distributed in the Mongol Empire, which was the Khalkha tribe. According to the information obtained, this tribe had about 600,000 soldiers, and its power was not small. However, because the area was too large, their power could not be concentrated at all. Every time they fought with outsiders, the number of troops they could mobilize became very limited. 600,000? It does have some momentum. After glancing at the number casually, Yang Chundong threw it aside. The so-called 600,000 was not in his eyes at all. After careful analysis, this number was really not a big deal. Other than the old people, children, and women, it was not bad if about 1/5 of the young people who could really ride horses and fight. There were only 120,000 of them, and they were spread out too thinly. They could only face tens of thousands of cavalrymen at most. Even Agador's 50,000 cavalrymen had been defeated, so there was no reason for them not to be able to defeat them. Chapter 742. Besides, even if it had a deterrent effect, if the opponent chosen was too weak, the effect would be limited. Summon all divisions and commanders for a military meeting. After issuing an order to Beta Persei, Yang Chundong walked straight to the newly built military building in the city. It didn't take long for the grassland to erupt into an uproar. 2 consecutive news broke the peace of the grassland in summer. The first news was that the beginning city had begun to open up wasteland nearby. Although the season was not right, it was obvious that they were preparing to plant crops next year. It was said that there were hundreds of thousands of acres of fertile land. This was naturally not much in the Central Plains, but on the grassland, where war could break out at any time, this courage seemed a little big. Some of the powers were still wondering why the mercenaries were so daring. Were they not afraid that after planting the seeds, they would be robbed when it was time for the harvest? Just as this thought was still echoing in the minds of some of the leaders of the surrounding forces, the second news came. In view of the fact that the Mabe Mongolians had instigated Yukasai of the Golden Family to come to the beginning city to cause trouble, the mercenaries decided to fight back to shock the people. In other words, the mercenaries were going to choose the Mabe Mongolians as their opponent. The news had just been spread out, and some people were still confirming the authenticity of the news. The mercenary army had already gathered and went straight out of the city to the Jeshingang area of Mabe Mongolian. As if to strengthen the deterrent effect, this time Yang Chundong personally led the troops. The troops were 5,200 people from the 3rd Division of the Cold Front, 3,000 people from the Jurchen Cavalry Regiment, 3,000 people from the Tatar Cavalry Regiment, and 3,200 people from the Reinforced Cavalry Regiment. A total of nearly 15,000 cavalry went out of the city. Tiger's Main's Independent Regiment, the 2nd Reinforced Cavalry Regiment, and the Logistics Regiment were left in the city. There were more than 10,000 people in total. Even if the enemy attacked, it was absolutely no problem to defend the beginning city for a certain period of time. The army exited the city. The mighty cavalry marched for several hours before exiting the city from the north and east gates. Then, they gathered at one place outside the city and headed straight for Jieshangang in a seemingly mighty manner. From the first city to the Jieshangang area, one of the places that couldn't be bypassed was the Tatar-controlled Yendu city, which was also known as the Lingji Spring in the future. General Mu Ren, who was guarding the city, was terrified when he heard the news that 15,000 mercenaries were approaching. As a powerful local force, Mu Ren had 3,000 cavalrymen and 2,000 infantrymen. Speaking of which, Wanda City wasn't very big, nor was it flourishing. In fact, it was extremely poor. These soldiers were more than enough to protect themselves, but when faced with a mercenary army of 15,000 cavalrymen, he didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Previously, Agadorji also belonged to the Tatar faction, and he had 50,000 cavalrymen. But wasn't he still defeated by the mercenaries? Now that they were facing each other, would they have a good ending? Was it possible to win? Mu Ren had no confidence at all. He had no choice but to cooperate with the mercenaries. Especially when he heard that one of his old friends was a senior general of the mercenaries. He immediately sent his own messenger to find the commander of the Tatar Cavalry Regiment, Su He, and wanted to find out what was going on. Mu Ren sent a messenger, but Su He didn't choose to meet him at the first time. Instead, he called Hazegashan, the commander of the regiment, and asked him to keep an eye on Mu Ren. Then he personally went to see Yang Chendong to inform the 6th young master of the matter. Su He was originally a defeated general, but because of his outstanding ability, he was favored by Yang Chendong. For him, Yang Chendong also let go of the enemy, Agadorji's son, Haruichu. Could be said that he gave him enough face, so he offered his loyalty. This time, he told Yang Chendong about the matter, which was a way to express his attitude. Knowing that Mu Ren wanted to cooperate with him, Yang Chendong said to Su He with a smile on his face, "You can tell them that we don't intend to do anything to Wandu, but they also have to abide by their duty. Don't think of attacking the first city. Also, about Mabe Mongolia, they have to tell us as much as they know. If they are not sincere enough, then we may kill them together." Yang Chendong had the confidence to say such words. In his opinion, it was not a big deal. With 15,000 elite cavalrymen in his hand, a small city with only 5,000 soldiers was really not a big deal. Su He took the order and went to see the messenger sent by Mu Ren. He conveyed the order of the 6th young master, and the messenger left in a daze. What was enough sincerity? Not only he couldn't explain it clearly, but Mu Ren himself also didn't understand it after hearing this answer. Forget it, don't think so much. Immediately send someone to write down all the information we know about Mabe Mongolia and give it all to the mercenaries. Mu Ren couldn't understand this sentence, but what he had to do was to do his best. If this couldn't satisfy the mercenaries, then they could only fight. He could only accept his fate. Hand it all over? Don't we need to keep some? Once the Mongolians of the Gobi Desert are heavily injured by the mercenaries, then our existence will become a real threat. The messenger reminded in a low voice, "If we don't hand it all over, I'm afraid we can't survive this." Mu Ren shook his head as if he had made some kind of decision. Then he looked at the messenger and said, "Okay, go and do it now." They were all Mongolians in the grassland, so Mu Ren did collect a lot of information about Mabe Mongolia. Previously, he just wanted to protect himself. He was worried that the mercenaries would attack him, but he didn't expect that one day the information could be used to please the mercenaries and protect himself. After the news was summarized, the messenger worked hard again and sent it to Commander Su He. Finally, it was placed in front of Yang Chendong. Looking at the pile of information that was more than half a person high, Yang Chundong laughed and said, "Yes, it seems that this Mu run is still very sensible. That's the case, inform the vanguard leader, Yella, to bypass Mabe City and go straight to Jeshingang." Yang Chundong knew that for so many years in the chaotic grassland, there were many different forces, and he couldn't solve all of them by himself. Since he couldn't do it for the time being, he had to set a benchmark, and that was to solve those hostile forces first. Mabe City was so close to the first city. If he could make them stay, it was equivalent to telling others that as long as they were honest, everyone could live in peace. Wasn't that an example? As for the Mabe Mongolia, they must be solved. Although it was very difficult to achieve the result of eliminating them, and it might not be possible with this little force, but it was necessary to severely injure the opponent. If he didn't do so, it would not be enough to intimidate others and not be able to establish his prestige. This time he brought out cavalry, and the logistics team didn't follow him. The soldiers of the army each prepared dry food for 20 days. In other words, unless they could snatch a large amount of the enemy's food, they could only last for about 20 days. If they didn't succeed, they would have to return. This was also a habit of the Mongolian cavalry, or a helplessness due to the constraints of the environment. Without supplies, the logistics couldn't keep up. Who knew how many ambitious people would end up wasting their time on this matter? However, it was also because of this that the distance between each tribe was relatively far, forming a natural safe distance between each other. Just like the information sent by Murin said, the entire Mabe Mongolia existed in the form of scattered tribes, and the farthest distance between their tribes was nearly 2,000 miles. That was to say, no matter how hard Yang Chundong tried, he couldn't run through the entire Mabe Mongolia's territory this time. Even if he couldn't go all the way, he would choose the key place to attack. Looking at the information sent by Muran and comparing it with the map, Yang Chundong focused his attack on the area west of Inma River. Inma River was like a natural moat, established naturally. And in the north of it, there were many Mabe Mongolian tribes, such as Sanfeng Mountain and the Three Gorges Mouth, Kanhali village. But crossing the river to attack was originally a military taboo. It was equal to cutting off one's own retreat and fighting with the enemy. This wasn't what Yang Chundong wanted to see, and in the current situation, he didn't need to take such a risk. It was better for him to stop there, and then continue to exert pressure on the Mabe Mongolian tribes in the area south of Inma River, forcing them to take the initiative to attack him. This was equal to turning passivity into initiative, and as long as the mercenaries made a big enough noise in the Jeshingang area, he wouldn't worry about the Mabe Mongolian tribes not being fooled and not coming to find him. At that time, he could wait for the enemy to be exhausted and fight with them. After making up his mind, the mercenaries were like a flying arrow, passing by the edge of the city and rushing straight to the Inma River area. Mabe Mongolian tribes. They had already known about the mercenary army's sudden invasion before the army had even arrived at Wanda City. After so many years of operation, it could be said that their scouts were everywhere. The mercenaries didn't mean to hide their tracks, so the news came immediately. The moment Khan received the news, he was so angry that his eyes widened and his beard blew. The mercenaries are so arrogant and infuriating. It was no wonder that Suitor would say that. He was the Khan of Gobi Mongol. He represented a powerful Mongol force. Most people were afraid that he would cause trouble for them. Who would take the initiative to provoke them? Not to mention that Wu Siki was not a member of his tribe. He was an emissary of the Golden Horde, a member of the Golden Horde. What did their actions have to do with him? Head Suitor was very angry. He thought that the mercenaries were looking down on him. He thought that they didn't dare to provoke the Golden family, so they targeted him. What? Do you really think that you can look down on us just because you defeated us in the Battle of the Dwarf Rock? If that's the case, humph. Chapter 743. Suda did not immediately say what he was about to snort, but the expressions of his subordinates in the tent all changed. Zamubala, the burly man with the name of White Tiger, stood up and said, "Great Khan, think twice before you act. We're not afraid of the mercenaries, but there's no point in fighting with them since we're the ones who stand out. It'll only benefit others. Yes, Great Khan, this kind of thing that benefits others is not worth it. Another general, Bao Yin, also stood up and expressed his opinion. Both of them felt that it was not worth fighting with the mercenaries. Perhaps there was no benefit in winning, and it would only damage their strength if they lost. However, the mercenaries had defeated Agar Dorji's 50,000 cavalry, which made them feel afraid and did not want to fight. How could Swade not see through the thoughts of these two generals? He, who did not want to fight, took this opportunity to say, "Humph, since the two generals have the same opinion, then let's retreat. Let's retreat to the north of Inma River first." Swade made the decision to retreat, which was a wise move. Speaking of which, the main force of Gobi Mongol was at the north of Inma River. He had already sent another general, Narasong, to gather the cavalry and young people of the tribes. The reason why he moved forward and occupied the Jeshingang area was to control more territory and snatch more rich resources. However, now that the mercenaries had appeared and built the first city, it was equivalent to destroying all of his ideas. Sud Khan's retreat could be considered a wise choice. The dozens of tribes below had no choice but to put down their temporary encampments, leaving behind the beautiful grazing land in front of them and retreating together with the Khan. Not everyone was obedient. In this world, there were always some people who were not afraid of anything. They were optimistic that even if the sky fell, there would be someone tall to hold it up. As for the fact that they were unknown to the public, no one would have any ideas about them. Speaking of which, there were many people like this. They could not make the decision to give up the beautiful water plants in front of them and chose to stay. They were hoping that the mercenaries wouldn't notice them at all and would just brush past them. They should be chasing after the main force of Sud Khan. In the past, it was difficult for Yang Chendong to find them. But since he got the information provided by Mu Ren, he knew the distribution of the Mongolian tribes in the Jishingang area. When the scouts at the front sent news that the Suda Khan had begun to retreat, but there were still some small tribes and even some individual households that did not listen to the advice to leave, he immediately seized this opportunity. Nuzan Vanguard Regiment, don't stop. Continue to pursue and attack. Let the 1st Cavalry Regiment rush forward and rob the people and livestock. The Mongols were not the only ones who knew how to plunder people and resources. Mercenaries did the same. Currently, the first city was in the midst of development and construction. What it lacked the most was population. These were all good seedlings. According to their attitude of wanting money more than their lives, if these people were brought to the first city and saw the prosperous development there, they would not leave even if they were driven away. Yang Chendong's analysis was right. Those who knew that the mercenaries were coming but still did not give up their current territory were those who wanted money more than their lives. After they were robbed and brought to the first city, they quickly fell in love with it and made great contributions to the development and construction of the first city in the future. But that was all in the future. Let's talk about the present. When the head of Windchaser Regiment received the military order and began to plunder the Mongolian tribes separately, many people were shocked by this behavior. Didn't they say that robbing people and things was their specialty? Why did these Han Chinese troops learn from them? Was it a joke when others said that the Great Ming Dynasty was rich in resources and had a large population? No matter what these people thought, the 1st Cavalry Regiment of Windchaser Regiment did not show any mercy. From large tribes with hundreds of people to small individual households with only 3 to 5 people, they did not let any of them go. According to the information provided by Mu Ren before, they found every one of them accurately. In some places, according to the information, they could not see anyone, only some traces of tents. But in some places, they did find a large number of horses and sheep, as well as a small number of frightened Mongolian people. According to the military order, the mercenaries did not kill anyone. As long as the other party did not resist, they would only be taken away together with the animals. On the contrary, if they wanted to resist desperately, they would not show any mercy. Even before they got close to the enemy, the arrows from a distance were enough to kill them. This led to a situation where Sud Khan led the army and kept walking in front. Behind him, more and more tribal people who refused to leave became captives in the hands of the mercenaries. When this kind of news began to gather one by one, It finally aroused strong dissatisfaction from Sud Khan. Even the generals and soldiers below had angry expressions on their faces. Although he was angry, Sud Khan also knew that if he went back now and fought with the mercenaries, both sides would suffer losses. For the future, for the big picture, he could only bear with it. However, his mouth still did not let them off. Humph! Mercenaries, remember this. The contempt and sin that you have imposed upon us today will be paid back tenfold or even 100-fold in the future. In just 12 days, the 1st Cavalry Regiment of Winchester Regiment had captured 5,000 Mongolian people, and the number of horses and sheep that they had captured was uncountable. With so many captives and resources suddenly increasing, the speed of the mercenaries was greatly affected, and the army started to slow down. Luckily, they had captured too much, especially some of the Mongolians who resisted. After they died, the horses and sheep became ownerless and could be used by the mercenaries. Kill some of the ownerless fat sheep to replenish the army's food. At the same time, send someone to inform Commander Yella to slow down and wait for our army to meet up. After knowing that Yella's Nuzan Cavalry Regiment was a day's journey away from the main army, Yang Chundong gave this order. Yang Chundong's military sense was really strong. The moment he felt that something was wrong, he immediately corrected it. However, this order was still a little too late. At this time, the Nuzan Cavalry Regiment was already being watched closely by Sud Khan. They had been chased for 12 days, and the Mongol army had even escaped first, so they had more than 12 days to escape. Finally, they came to the side of the river. Once they crossed this river, they would be able to meet up with more Mongol cavalry regiment. By the time they reached this point, Sudar Khan's confidence had also become a lot stronger. Especially when the scouts at the rear sent news that a 3,000-man cavalry was 50 to 60 li behind them, while the main force of the mercenaries would take a full day to reach them. A smile that hadn't been seen for a long time appeared in Sudar Khan's eyes. Ha ha ha, only 3,000 cavalry, and you dare to chase us so close? Since you don't know life from death, don't blame me for eating you. The enemy's forces were so small, and Sud Khan saw hope. After continuously retreating, the morale of the entire tribe was very low, and they urgently needed a victory to boost their morale. He immediately called his subordinates, Zamubala and Bao-in, and told them his thoughts. Sud Khan looked at them expectantly, waiting for their decision. The two generals did not expect Sud Khan to have the idea of fighting with the mercenaries. However, when they heard that the enemy only had 3,000 cavalry behind them, they became excited. Although the mercenaries were tough bones and were not easy to chew, the result was that both sides would suffer heavy losses. However, the enemy only had 3,000 cavalry, and even if they fought, their losses would be limited. The important thing was that they had been running for so many days, and had long been suppressing the anger in their hearts. If they had the chance to vent it out, it would raise the morale of the army and the people. Fight. The two generals hesitated for a moment before making the same decision. You can't fight. While Sud Khan was still excited about the actions of the two generals, another crisp voice came from the entrance of the tent, and then Princess Narain Tuya's figure walked into the tent. Because of her figure, her boundless chest squeezed in before she arrived. Then Princess Tuya's beautiful figure appeared. She first glared at the two generals, especially Bao-in. This person had previously said that the mercenaries were very powerful, and fighting with them would not be worth the loss. But now, he actually advocated for a fight, which made her somewhat disappointed. After looking at the two generals, Tuya's gaze fell on Sud Khan. Father, you can't fight. The mercenaries are very powerful, and even the Walla's best fighter, Yeshen, is not their opponent. Previously, there was the news of Agador's 50,000 cavalry being wiped out. If we fight with them, it will be difficult to win. What does a girl know? Seeing that his daughter dared to question his father's decision, Sud Khan's face immediately showed anger. To be able to become a Khan, there must be something good about him. After being in the position for so long, his body had formed a unique domineering aura. Normally, even someone as valiant as Zamubala wouldn't dare look him in the eyes. However, today, in front of Tuoya, she wasn't afraid at all. She looked straight back at her father's eyes. Fighting with the mercenaries will only cause our Gobi Mongol to fall into a state of eternal damnation. Living in the grasslands since childhood, Tuya was used to seeing people fight to the death with their enemies, and this made her admire heroes even more. And a long time ago, when she learned that the traitor of the grasslands had also been defeated by a young talent of the great Ming dynasty, she began to admire him. She had always wanted to meet him, to see what kind of person he was, to be able to defeat this traitor of the grasslands with less than 1/10 of his military strength. Chapter 744. However, Tuoya, who was not fated to enter the great Ming dynasty, thought that there was no hope in her life. She never thought that she would meet him on the grassland one day. However, she did not know him and missed him in the end. After the battle, when she found out that the Han youth who saved her from Hararushi was the war god of the great Ming dynasty that she had admired for a long time, she even had the idea of going to the beginning city to see this war god again. Her worship made Tuoya interested in Yang Chendong. Although it was not to the extent that she had feelings for him, at least she had a good impression of him. However, this was not enough to make her lose her mind. Especially when she saw her father's failed sneak attack last time, she sadly discovered that they seemed to have become enemies. Would there be a good result if she took the initiative to meet the enemy? However, she really wanted to see Yang Chendong and tell him that she admired him very much. Under such psychological contradictions, the mercenaries suddenly sent out their troops, and their target was the Mongol tribe in the Gobi Desert. When she first heard the news, Tuoya was a little angry. However, she thought about it from Yang Chendong's perspective. First, there was a sneak attack for no reason, and then there was the suspicion of instigating Wuxia. It seemed that the decision to send out troops was not a big deal. When the mercenaries sent out their troops, her father immediately made the decision to retreat, which made Tuoya very happy. Dodging the mercenaries' attack this time was a sign of weakness, but it was also a sign of goodwill. With this experience, as long as her father was willing to lower his head, it would be possible for him to become friends with the mercenaries. Tuoya believed that a true hero would not lower himself to the same level as a weakling. In a happy mood, although they were escaping, Tuoya's face was full of smiles. However, now that she suddenly heard that her father was going to fight with the mercenaries, and it was going to be a fight with many people, she wanted to take advantage of the situation and immediately stopped him. If this battle was fought, then no matter if they won or lost, they would only be enemies with the mercenaries in the future. It would be difficult for them to become friends. This was definitely not the result she wanted to see. What eternal damnation! This time, the mercenaries came with great force. We have already backed down, but they still captured a few thousand of our tribesmen. Who knows how many horses and sheep they captured? Have they ever considered our feelings? Let me tell you, we have to fight this battle. Not only that, we have to raise the morale of our Mongol cavalry. Men, take the princess away and keep a close eye on her. Without my orders, she will not have any freedom. Suitor, who had already made his decision, would not allow anyone to interfere with him. Even if this person was his beloved daughter, it was still the same. The bodyguards outside the tent heard the Khan's order and walked into the tent. They looked at Tuoya with an innocent expression and said, "Princess, we are just following orders. Please don't make things difficult for us." After saying that, someone came forward to invite Tuoya to leave. "Father, you can't hit him, or you'll regret it." Tuoya was taken away, but her voice still echoed in the air. "Don't bother about her. What does a girl know about important matters? How about this? Let's first discuss how to eliminate these 3,000 mercenaries." Suede forcefully banished his daughter's cries in his heart and continued to discuss military matters with the two generals. The Inma River was less than 100 miles ahead. When the Nuzan cavalry had chased them all the way here, they naturally slowed down. As the commander, Yella had the ability to command. He also knew that it was not a good idea to go in alone. However, he still chose to follow so closely. He wanted to wait for the enemy to cross the river before attacking them halfway. He wanted to achieve victory to show the Nuzan cavalry's ferocity. Reporting, Commander, the 6th young master has given the order. He wants us to stay here and wait for the army to meet up. In the temporary military tent, as they were waiting for the news of the Mongol army crossing the river, a messenger came in and passed down Yang Qindong's order. Just as this messenger appeared, another scout that had been sent to the front also rushed back. Reporting, Commander, the Mongol army has begun to cross the river. Oh, it has begun? Ha ha ha. Yella's face was filled with excitement. After chasing for more than 10 days, the opportunity had finally come. Yella was still laughing when the vice commander, Lu Dai, suddenly said, Commander, the 6th young master has just given the order. Sai, what do you know? Haven't you heard that when a general is out there, he can't follow orders? Furthermore, although the 6th young master is strong, he is not at the front lines and does not know what is happening here. Naturally, he can't make the most accurate judgments. Yella waved his hand casually. He had already received news that the 1st Cavalry Regiment behind them had already made their move. Not only had they stolen countless horses and sheep, they had also captured more than 5,000 people. This was a great achievement. He had been jealous of this for a long time. Now that he finally had a chance to show off, how could he give it up? Even with Yang Qindong's military order, Yila still had the idea of fighting a war. Otherwise, what was the point of him trying so hard to become the commander of the vanguard? If he did not have a chance to show off, wouldn't he be letting down the word vanguard? Commander, but Lu Dai still wanted to say something. Yella waved his hand impatiently and said, All right, if you are afraid, I will leave you with a battalion of cavalry here to wait for the main forces. It was obvious that Yella was angry. At this time, how could Lu Dai choose to stay? He nodded and said, All right, then I will fight with Commander. Ha, that's right. Men, go scout again. When you see the Mongolian vanguard crossing the river and boarding the rafts, report back immediately. Yella laughed heartily, as though he could already see countless merits waiting for him. Lu Dai could no longer stop Yella from sending out his troops. After he left the tent, he called for a soldier and said, Bring 2 horses and leave. You must inform the 6th young master immediately. Tell him that we are going to attack the Mongolian vanguard. Yes. The man nodded, then turned and left quickly. Lu Dai looked at the departing figure and sighed. Let's hope that Commander's decision this time is right. The Mongolian vanguard had already started to cross the Inma River. Under the transport of the rafts, countless livestock and civilians crossed the river and left. However, what the outsiders did not know was that the Mongolian vanguard that had just been transported across the river had turned back. They quickly hid on both sides of the river. Due to the terrain, the scouts of the Jurchen Cavalry Regiment could only watch from afar and could not get close at all. This little trick was hidden from them. When he saw that there were only 5,000 to 6,000 enemies, the scout immediately turned around and reported the news to Commander Yella, who had already advanced 30 miles to the rear. After waiting for 10 hours, the opportunity finally appeared. Yella didn't want to wait a moment longer. She immediately gathered the troops and rode straight to the side of the Inma River. In front of the river, Sud Khan and a few other generals did not leave. They had been waiting for the mercenaries to come closer. However, after 10 hours, most of the vanguard had left, but the enemy still had not appeared. They could not help but feel anxious. Don't tell me the mercenaries are trying to chase us to the north of the river? Don't tell me they have no intention of fighting? Why don't we charge back? No, once we charge back, the enemy will have too much time to retreat. We won't be able to catch up to them. With a distance of 30 li, everyone was riding on horses. No matter which side it would be difficult to catch up to the other side. Amidst the discussions, Suder Khan's expression turned ugly. Could it be that the mercenaries were really that careful? If that's the case, I'm afraid there won't be a chance. Just as Sud Khan and the other generals were sighing at how timid the mercenaries were, a scout finally ran over and reported loudly, Khan, the mercenaries have moved out. They are approaching us from 30 li away. Oh! Haha, they're finally here? As if he had won the lottery, Sud Khan laughed out loud. The enemy had finally taken the bait. Now it was time for him to perform well. Pass down my orders, make preparations according to the previous plan. The various generals also left with excitement in their hearts, looking for their own troops that were lying in ambush, preparing to outflank and besiege the other party. Under the anticipation of everyone, the Nuzen cavalry finally appeared after more than 2 hours. When they were about 5 li away from the river, they saw more than 2,000 Mongols anxiously crossing the river on wooden rafts. "Aha, just in time," Yella said happily. The enemy had less than 3,000 people, and they were running away in a hurry. They couldn't form any effective fighting force. If they rushed up now, they would be able to kill a lot. In this way, as the leader of the vanguard, he didn't disgrace his mission this time. "Attention everyone, charge with me, blow the bugle. Toot 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 toot." A loud bugle call sounded, and the 3,000 cavalrymen rapidly approached the side of the horse-drinking river. The sound of hooves landing on the ground caused clouds of smoke to rise. Under the setting sun, it was like a broken song of doomsday, blowing the bugle call of war. "They're finally here. Everyone pay attention. Get off the rafts and fight. Archers, attack from afar. Everyone else, get on your horses and charge." Sud Khan, who couldn't wait any longer, smiled when he saw that the mercenaries had fallen for the trap. Only 3,000 people came. It was finally time for him to take revenge. The Mongol army methodically defended according to the previous plan. Many soldiers even got on their horses and flashed their sabers. This scene fell into the eyes of the vice leader of the Nuzen cavalry, Lu Dai, who was getting closer and closer. He felt that something was wrong. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.